Thank you, Robert. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Joint Audit and Standards Committee. I am Councillor Dave Muller and I am chairing the meeting today. May I first remind you all of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that you maintain social distance from all other persons in the chamber and in social areas. Please ensure that you wear a mask unless when you are moving around the building. Once you have taken your seat, you may remove your mask. Please ensure that you use the hand sanitizer and the wipes provided. Please maintain social distance at all times during the meeting and during any breaks. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use, that you do not interrupt other speakers, that if you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure that your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. Additionally, we will be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I'd like to now make some introductions. The officers attending the meeting today are Rebecca Hewitt, the Acting Corporate Manager for Financial Operations. Good morning, Rebecca. John Snell, the Corporate Manager, Internal Audit and Data Protection. Good morning, John. And I'd like to welcome Mark Hodgson, who from Ernst & Young Auditors, who's joining us for the first time today. So welcome, Mark, to the committee. We have Mandy Smith and Robert Carmichael as our governance officers today. I'd like to now move to the agenda. Can I have the apologies for absence and substitutions, please, Mandy?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Barrett and Councillor Lindsay, and Councillor Amoroson and Warboys are absent from the meeting at present.
Thank you very much. Right, item number 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest? None? Okay. I'd now like to move to paper JAC/21/9 to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of September 2021, and we're looking for accuracy only. Happy with the meeting, the minutes? Can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Okay, Councillor Hurren and Councillor Caston as the seconder. I'd now like to ask the governance officer, please, if we could go to the electronic vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the vote is now in progress on the app. That's unanimous, Chair. 6 votes for.
Thank you. Number 4, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
No petitions.
Thank you very much. And do we have questions by the public?
No questions.
And questions by councillors?
No questions from councillors.
Thank you very much. I now move on to agenda item number 7. This is JAC/21/10, the half-year report on Treasury management for 21-22, and I would now like to invite Rebecca Hewitt, the Acting Corporate Manager for Finance Operations, to present the report. Over to you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. So this is report JAC/21/10. It's the half-year report on Treasury management for 2021-22. So this is the Joint Treasury Management Report covering the position for the first 6 months of the financial year 2021-22. It provides details of performance, effects of decision taken during that period and compliance with the Council's Treasury Management Policy. The report explains the factors affecting the strategy and activities, including the regulatory framework, economic conditions, interest rate and liquidity risk. Interest rates during the year have continued at very low levels, and the Bank of England base rate has remained at 0.1%. The economic recovery from the coronavirus pandemic continued to dominate the first half of the financial year. The easing of restrictions boosted activity in the second quarter of the calendar year, helping push GDP up by 5.5% quarter on quarter. The employment rate increased and economic activity rates decreased, suggesting an improving labour market picture. Annual CPI inflation rose to 3.2% in August, and the Bank of England now expects inflation to exceed 4% by the end of the calendar year, owing largely to developments in energy and goods prices. More specifically for the two councils, as highlighted in Appendix C, paragraph 5.4, there was one occasion where BABA exceeded its daily bank limit with Lloyds by 136,000. This was due to Lloyds' online banking system being unavailable for the day, meaning that no balances could be invested. For Mid-Suffolk, banking activities undertaken were within the daily bank account limits. Each council has reduced its debt, BABA by 5.4 million and Mid-Suffolk by 9 million. All investment activities undertaken were in accordance with the approved counterparty list. The council's investment activities, including average returns, can be found at Appendix C of the report. Investment by both councils in Funding Circle has reduced as unallocated funds have been reclaimed and existing loans repaid. For both councils, investment reduced by 31,000, leaving the balance at 30th of September as 135,000 for BABA and 131,000 for Mid-Suffolk. Both councils are compliant with the upper limits for interest rate exposure. The investment activity undertaken for the first half year was done so in priority order of security and liquidity over yield as prescribed in the Treasury management strategy. I would now welcome any questions that you may have on this report.
Thank you, Rebecca. Now open the floor to questions, please, for Rebecca. Do we have any questions from members? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I might be taking something away from Councillor McLaren, who's actually a BABA councillor, if you're going to ask about the overdraft limit being exceeded. I'll give way to Councillor McLaren because she's a BABA councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Caston. Chair, thank you. Rebecca, obviously that sort of was identified in the recommendations. I just need a very practical sort of explanation for that. I'm very simple-minded, so I looked at that. Does each council have a different bank? So Mid-Suffolk and BABA bank with a different bank? That's one question. And following on for that, if they do share the same bank, why did they not have the same impact? If it was a system failure, I was wondering why it hadn't impacted Mid-Suffolk. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you for your question, Councillor. They do both bank with the same bank, so they are both with Lloyds. The reason that BABA would have been affected and Mid-Suffolk not affected would simply be due to the need to invest on that day. So I think BABA had a balance which would have been over the 2 million limit that we had in the account, whereas just due to cash flow, Mid-Suffolk weren't in that position, so we didn't need to invest on that particular day. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't know whether Councillor Caston was going to come back.
Thank you. Were there any charges, or what were the implications of going over for that period?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So there was no charges for us for going over, so it is a limit that we have for our own purposes. So anything over 2 million, we try and invest for interest rate to get interest on the money. So the implications would be that we would have lost a day's interest on that, which I think I've estimated to be probably around about £3 for that one night.
at all?
No, so just to clarify, so that wasn't actually set by the bank, that was set by us. So there really was very little problem with going over, but it's obviously got to be noted in this report.
That's correct. So it's a
Thank
limit
you.
we set.
Rebecca, do we have any more questions, please, for the corporate manager? Mary?
Thank you, Chair. Rebecca, looking at the investments, I tried to get my head around each part of it. I sort of get the impression, and you can contradict me if I'm wrong, that we're rather cautious with our investment programme. And so that's the question. That's the first question. Do we err on the side? I can understand the reason for that, but do we err on the side of caution? And the second question is, if we do, who actually makes that decision? Is it the Section 151 officer? Is it a cabinet decision, or do Arlene Close sort of advise us to be cautious? Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have set limits on the instruments that we can invest in that will be set as part of the Treasury Management Strategy at the start of the year. So that will be in consultation with Arlene Close. Obviously, because it's council taxpayers' money, we have to consider security over everything else. So part of that consideration will be those that are secure, and we'll set limits in consultation with Arlene Close that we will work to during the year.
Thank you. So, like Cabinet, the portfolio holder for finance in both councils, do they have any influence on that decision about investments?
Only in the process of setting those, approving those Treasury Management Strategy at the start of the year, which would come through here and then go to council, so only as part of that process.
So that's no decision making there, really?
No, so the day-to-day decisions would be made by the Section 151 officer based on the limits in the Treasury Strategy.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you
very much, Councillor McLaren. Do we have any more questions, please? Councillor Hurren, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Quickly, Rebecca, I feel I should know the answer to this, but on the HRA long-term borrowing, it's 89 million. I presume this is the money we had to borrow to buy back the council houses we thought we already owned, isn't it? It's that one, isn't it?
That's correct.
And when this was taken out, it's like a mortgage. I did expect it to go down on a yearly basis, but it seems to have been stuck at this figure for quite a while. And I just wondered why that was. I remember it's very controversial and I was against it. I expected at least it'll get a bit less each year, but it doesn't appear to be doing so. I wonder if you could just remind us of the arrangements and why it's not getting any less, apparently, please.
Yes, certainly. Thank you for the question. It was a range of loans that were taken, and you're correct, it was to buy out of the subsidy system. There was they took a range of different loans at different maturities. So it's not annuity, it doesn't pay off continuously, but I think there's a different range of loans, so some of those will start being paid off in the next few years. I can check on for more details if that would help.
Someone out of meeting about that. It's a difficult one, yeah. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I've got one question, Rebecca. I know with Funding Circle we're down to 1%. Is that likely to stay at 1%, or are we thinking of eventually going away from Funding Circle altogether, please?
Yes, thank you. I understand that the intention is to move away from it altogether, but I will clarify that.
Councillor Caston, please.
Thank you. Yeah, and in regards to Funding Circle, what kind of Funding Circle product have we got? Because I couldn't really see there. Is it a fund of many different loans, or has the Arlington Close chosen who to invest with? Or, could you just clear up how that works?
Yes, thank you. It is a fund of different loans. I don't know exactly how that works. I would have to go away and find that out. But yes, it is a fund of different loans.
Okay, then I will now open up the issue for debate. Do members would like to debate this issue? No? Councillor Caston?
Yeah, I think, as always, it's a good report. I'm really glad to see that exceeded overdraft isn't very serious, because I did think that was the major thing on this, but to me it doesn't seem like too much of an issue. Quite exciting about the UK Infrastructure Bank and the possibilities with that, and the changes to the PWLB. But for me, this is good, and I'd like to. Are we recommend? We're noting this, aren't we?
No, what we're going to do, there are 3 votes on this particular paper, so I will do those individually. The first one is actually, as it stated on page 11, that the Treasury management activity for the first 6 months of 2021-22, as set out in this report and appendices, be noted. I know we normally just don't vote on a noted, but it is actually down for voting on the electronic vote. So, if no one else wishes to debate, are you proposing that we go for the? You're proposing to go for that recommendation?
I'm proposing to move forward if everyone's happy.
Fine. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor McLaren, thank you. Can I ask the Governance Officer, please, if we could go to the electronic vote for 3.1, please?
Thank you, Chair. Vote 3.1 is in progress. I did have it confirmed that we need votes for this because the committee is confirming that the Treasury management complies with the number of statutory requirements, so that's why we need to have the votes.
Thank you.
That's unanimous, Chair. 6 votes for.
Thank you very much, Mandy. Now, recommendation 3.2 is for Baber councillors only to vote on. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for recommendation? Councillor McLaren and Councillor Hurren. And I'll read the recommendation to you. That it be noted that Baber District Council's Treasury management activity for the first 6 months of 21-22 was in accordance with the approved Treasury management strategy, and that, except for one occasion when the Council exceeded its daily bank account limit with Lloyds by £136,000, as mentioned in Appendix C, paragraph 5.4, the Council has complied with all the Treasury management indicators for this period. So could I ask the Governance Officer, please, to go to the electronic vote and say this is for Baber councillors only. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress.
Thank you.
That's unanimous. 3 votes for.
Thank you very much, Mandy. And the recommendation to Mid-Suffolk Council, which is item 3.3 in the list of recommendations. And can I have a proposer and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Norris and Councillor Caston. And I'll just read the recommendation to you. That it be noted that Mid-Suffolk District Council's Treasury management activity for the first 6 months of 21-22 was in accordance with the approved Treasury management strategy, and that the Council has complied with all the Treasury management indicators for this period. So I will now ask the actual Governance Officer to open up the vote, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. That's unanimous. 3 votes for, sorry.
Thank you very much indeed, Mandy. I'd now like to move on to item number 8, which is the GAC/21/11, the Joint Audit Plan for 2021. And I'd now like to invite Mark Hodgson from Ernst & Young External Auditors to present his report. Over to you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. So yeah, Mark Hodgson, I'm a partner in Ernst & Young and taking over from Suresh Patel as your signing partner on both audits. So just as background, I also do Suffolk County Council, the Pension Fund and West Suffolk Council within my portfolio and lead our team across East Anglia. So the plan before you is our plan in order to gain sufficient audit assurance to sign our audit opinion in respect of the 2021 financial statements for both councils. And I'll pick out a couple of highlights and then take any questions members may have. So on our page 5, we set out the key risks to the audit and why they are there. So in a year with a lot of change, there are some new risks in there. And the ones in relation to grant funding, bad debt provision, collection fund accounting, and non-domestic rate appeals are all as a consequence of COVID-19 and the financial reporting consequences that has on a set of financial statements. So they are new risks for this year in order to get assurance over those. We also increased the risk in relation to the community infrastructure levy because there were a number of audit errors last year, so clearly we need to make sure they are correct this year and we have assurance over those. All the other risks in that table and in the plan in section 2 are consistent with the prior year, so hopefully you get a sense that things are the same, plus COVID, plus last year's error that we need to get assurance over. Then moving on to materiality, which is pages 8 and 9 of our report. So for Baber Council, we're working to a materiality level of £1.154 million. So in summary, any audit differences above that were not adjusted would cause us an issue for our audit opinion. And in relation to Mid Suffolk, on the subsequent page, it's 1.205 million. And then when we come back with our results of our audit in February time, we'll be reporting any audit differences above 58,000 and 60,000 respectively to you, so you can see what has moved through the audit against those risks and that materiality level. Section 3 of the plan sets out our responsibilities for value for money, and these have changed slightly this year. So the National Audit Office has issued a new code to all auditors, and the changes in the code are kind of threefold. So firstly, auditors have to report any significant risks that we identify, and then what procedures we would be carrying out against those risks. We are yet to conclude that work, but I will bring it back to you at a subsequent meeting. Once we've completed our work, we would report any matters against significant risks in our audit report, so our audit opinion. So in effect, this is the same as it would be as qualifying an old value for money conclusion. The kind of the terminology for wording's now moved to we would report by other matters. And then at the end of the whole process, we issue a commentary which shows you how we got to the conclusion we reported in the opinion. So it's a little bit circular and it goes backwards and forwards, but hopefully it gives you as members and the public a little or a greater sense of how we've identified risks, addressed those risks, and then been able to conclude the audit. And then the last section in terms of audit fees, we have set out the same approach as we did last year. We're still waiting for public sector audit appointments to determine formally the fee in respect of 2019-20, so our figures are exactly the same as last year until we get that determination. Those are the highlights that I wanted to get across, but I'm happy to park it there and take any questions anybody would have.
Thank you, Mark. Do members have any questions for Mark, please?
When you said about reporting significant risks, who's that reporting to? Is that reporting to us or another body? Sorry, I didn't quite understand it.
It will be reporting back to you, so it will be an update to this audit plan with any value for money risks that we identify.
No? Then I'd like to move into debate. Would members like to debate this paper? Councillor Caston, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it seems like another layer of protection on there. I was a little bit confused with the risk management being instead of the actual risk being the new inherent risk being bright red, but I soon got to grips with it, and I think it's a much better way of looking at it, because having been on this committee a little while, it helps you focus on the new issues, which are, that's the most important part of this. So it looks good to me, and I'm very happy with it.
Yes, I just want to say and commend the auditors on their report, because it was very succinct and easy to understand. So thank you.
Other members wish to take part in debate? No? And I also would like to thank Ernst & Young for their report, so thank you very much indeed, Mark, for that. Okay, we have a recommendation, and the recommendation is that the proposed provisional approach for the 2021 audit be agreed. Can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Norris to propose, and a seconder, please. Councillor Nunn, thank you very much. So pleased to go to the electronic vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That's 6 votes for, unanimous.
Right, I'd now like to move on to agenda item number 9. This is JAC 2112, the Interim Internal Report for 21-22, and I'd now like to invite John Snell, the Corporate Manager for Internal Audit, to present the report. Over to you, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Councillors. As required under the Public Sector Audit Standards, the purpose of this report is really to conform members of the work undertaken within the Internal Audit Service for the first 6 months of 2021-22, and it also provides councillors with a review of the variety and scope of the projects and corporate activities which are supported through the work of the team during the year. You will see from the work undertaken that of the completed audits, only one returned an audit opinion of the control environment of limited assurance, and that was based at the end of last financial year 2021. So in line with our internal audit procedures, this audit was followed up, and I'm pleased to report that improvements have been made in this particular area since the initial audit, and the audit opinion has elevated from limited assurance to reasonable assurance. The full status of this particular follow-up report, which is attributed to housing and health and safety issues, is reported in section 6 of this report below, and also together with all the audits that were undertaken during those 6 months, it gives you a status position. As well as conducting audit reviews, internal audit have a significant involvement within the period in a variety of different council activities. And this includes leading on the production of the annual governance statement 2021, which was presented to this committee back in May. Also attending the Council's Statutory Officers Working Group, and that's my role is to provide appropriate and professional determination on governance issues, again, through the period as they arise. I'm also one of the Council's 2 Deputy Monitoring Officers, and so my role primarily is really to support Emily Yule, the Council's Monitoring Officer, with a specific duty to ensure that the Councils, their officers and elected councillors maintain the highest standards of the conduct in terms of the work that they do. Internal audit continues to maintain and facilitate the deployment of the Council's significant risk register. And again, that's reported back to this committee and also has that consultation with SLT as we move forward. In terms of full details of the anti-fraud and corruption work, which I'm also responsible for, my role is to report to you on an annual basis in terms of what our findings were, and this was last presented to this committee back in March. Until recently, internal audit had been part of the Council's tactical management team, responsible for managing emerging risks and directing resources to help ensure critical services are maintained across the two councils, particularly obviously with the COVID-19 pandemic in particular. My role is now just called upon when it's required, particularly with the governance arrangements and these associated risks that we need to address right across those two councils. I also have a member of the internal audit team who continues to support the council's business cell by providing assurance over the administrating of the various business grants schemes which obviously have been announced through central government throughout this pandemic. There's no additional audit-related issues that I think I need to bring to your attention at the moment, so I'm happy at this stage to field any questions that councillors may have on the report. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Do we have any questions, please, for John, for members?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 107, Planning Enforcement, it says work in progress, but there's no schedule there of timetable for when it's anticipated to be completed. Could you give some indication on that? Because this is a sort of a very hot subject actually at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, for your question. The reason I put a work in progress is it's actually the draft report is imminent. So at the moment, the auditor who undertook the work is having conversations with Phil Isbell and his team. The reason why I haven't put a summary of the findings at the moment, they still need to be discussed, obviously, with management, and they need a management decision, but this will be reported back at the year end when I do my annual audit reports. Hence why it's work in progress at this stage. But it's just to alert you as members that we are undertaking this work, and it will be reported in full at the end of the year, probably March, April time next year.
Thank you, Chair. John, excellent paper, but I quite like questioning sort of nebulous subjects. And you've mentioned on page 100 about ethics being audited. Could you explain to us how you go about that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's sometimes a bit of a dry subject, but with my head of audit hat on, but also my deputy monitoring hat on, as I probably mentioned, excuse me, ethical is critical, the values that we actually attain, both as officers and members. The ethics standards, if you like, in terms of the work that we do, is more focused on the officers within the audits that we undertake. So we're looking at part of an holistic approach to our audit work. We're looking at behaviours and conduct of officers and how their services are manifested to our customers as well. So there's always an element that we're very conscious. So that's why we try and draw in with the ethics side of the audits, but it's a holistic approach on that side. So we would expect our officers to be operating to a high standard, and the values that are set, those 5 standards that are set and been signed off by members. So that's how we try to integrate it within our work that we do. So where we see examples, poor examples of behaviour in terms of their conduct, or generalisation in terms of those 5 values, we would report that on and report it back to management.
So if I was a new member of staff, would that be defined in some training, or are there set policies that you can refer staff to?
Yes, certainly part of the induction phase undertaken by our HR and also the manager they report to, the line manager. There's the code of conduct for employees, and they are required to read and sign that they have actually read and understood the contents of that document.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. On this housing, health and safety, with it says the policies and procedures may have been to blame with the bad outcome, the limited assurance. how far are we along with that, looking at those policies and dealing with that?
Sorry, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so just to draw back in terms of when it received a limited assurance, there was a lack of clarity, if you like, in terms of the policy and procedures. They weren't signed off, they weren't necessarily embedded, and as a result, we found a number of issues in terms of supporting documentation and reconciling the compliance checks that were required. Since then, the housing section are devising what's called a dashboard. So they're bringing all the information together and capturing it in one place. Part of that dashboard is obviously to have a look at the policies and procedures. And my understanding from when I spoke last to Gavin, they are in draft format. They just need to be formally signed off and then disseminated through right through the whole of their team. So they're well underway to do that. And I think the part of the problem was they'd gone through a restructure and it was fairly fluid. And I think, to be brutally honest, there was a slight lack of management oversight as a result of that. Now that's been drawn in and there's a dedicated officer dealing with that. He's overseeing it, and as a result, that audit opinion, as I said, is elevated to reasonable assurance. There's still a little way to go, but the key controls are now in place. If that provides a level of assurance to you, Councillor.
Yes, please. Councillor Hurren, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Morning, John. The thing that sort of leapt off the page to me is the asset management. It sounds as if something is going on, but we're not quite sure what. And it sounds also as if we've lost control of sort of lists of what we actually own. Is that a fair comment? And basically, where are we with that? Because I would find that worrying, really.
Yeah, thanks, thank you, Councillor. So on page 111, you'll see that part of that audit was to do, as I say, with asset management and actually providing that assurance over the effectiveness and control of our assets, etc. As you'll see, that's work in progress as well. So it's just a timing issue at the moment. So that's almost imminent. So again, we'll be reporting back at year end. But we're having conversations at the moment. We're practically at draft stage reports, so we're just waiting for some management response before we can formally issue it. But that will come through to this committee, as I said, at year-end report.
Sorry, John, that'll come before us when, did you say?
Next year, probably be about April, May time in terms of the forward plan. That's when I will produce my annual report for the whole of the year, and you will see where we've got work in progress. They would have been completed, so you'll have a full picture in terms of the audit coverage and the findings of those individual audits.
Okay, thank you, John, because I would deem that sort of quite important.
Yes, thank you. Excuse me. Not so much a question as more just a comment to John. On these work in progress items, would it be possible just to give an indication when you're likely to be able to give a conclusion to this work? Because it would save us then asking the questions, wouldn't it?
Yes, certainly. I think that's a very valid point. And as I said, what I'll do is I'll consider that obviously for the year-end report. So if there's any work in progress there hasn't been concluded, I will put a time frame for you, so at least you can have that indication to pick it up when we report next to you. But it's a very valid point, so thank you, Councillor.
No. I'd like to concur with what Councillor Norris says on that, John. I think that's really, really important that we do have a sort of timeline as to when these reports are expected. Thank you. In that case, I'd like to...
Thank you. Do we need to condition to have those timelines on the end of the year end, or I'm quite happy to for John Schnell to say that he's going to give them to us at the year end, but I just wondered if members thought we should condition it in future reports.
I'm happy to take advice from you as councillors.
Yeah. Personally, I don't think there's a need for that. Certainly from my experience in the past working for District Audit and the Audit Commission, we used to sort of give a timeline as when the results were due. So And John's taken that on board, so if members are happy, then I'm more than happy because John's agreed to do that. So it's up to the members if they wish to go for that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'll follow your lead on it. I don't think it's an issue. Maybe I'm used to being in planning meetings where everything needs to be conditioned and put in, or it might disappear.
Councillor Caston, do we have any more? We're in debate. Does anyone else wish to debate this topic? Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed for your report, John. That is much appreciated. The recommendation is that the contents of the internal audit report supported by Appendix A be noted. Therefore, I would now like to move on to item 10, and I would now like to invite John again, the Deputy Monitoring Officer, to present the report, the Complaints Monitoring Report. Thank you, John.
Thank you again, Chair. So what do you have in front of you? So in line with each council's constitution, the monitoring officer is required to provide this committee with an update on code of conduct complaints received or determined since last time that such complaints were reported to this committee. So the report covers complaints received in the 4-month period from July to November, and also shows the previous 4-month period. The table shows that for Baber, there's been a reduction in the total number of complaints received, and those that have been received related more to parish council complaints rather than a district council level. So of the 6 complaints received, only 1 of those was upheld, which related to an issue around lack of respect. For Mid-Suffolk, there's been a noticeable increase in complaints received, with all but 1 complaint at parish council level. 7 of those complaints, which equates to about 50%, were upheld and related to the same incident, covering issues of bringing the council into disrepute. The MO and Emily's DMOs, myself and Jan Robinson, also continue to receive high number of general governance inquiries from pre-complaint advice from town and parish councils. I'm happy to take any questions, but just a bit of a caveat, I won't be able to divulge or go into any details on specific complaints because of the nature, the sensitivity and the confidentiality aspect, but happy to talk generally about complaints. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Do we have any questions, please, for John? Councillor McLaren, please.
Thank you, John. The independent person in the complaints management, could you just expand on that? Who is it, or where do they come from? Are they from outside the organisation? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So the independent person is a part of the requirement as it is. It's an independent, so they're totally objective, and it helps to support and add integrity to the whole process. So we've employ 4 independent persons, and they are agreed across Suffolk, and individuals are interviewed for their suitability and experience. It don't have to necessarily come from a public sector, but they should show attributes in terms of fairness and also those principles, Lord Nolan's principles, the 7 principles of fairness. That is part of our process. So once we receive a code of conduct where we think there's a potential breach, we will do an initial assessment, and we then pass that on to the independent person to agree what our assessment is or not before we take it to the next stage.
Continue with that, Chair. So, is that post remunerated?
It can be. It's not quite as straightforward as that. So if you tend to get a lot of complaints, and particularly of more of a complex nature, we can pay that individual, but normally no.
And where does that show in the accounts then?
That would go through, presumably, our monitoring officer has a budget, so that would go through there, and that money would be taken out from the budget, which is already preset.
Thank you.
With these complaints on parish councils and councillors and district councillors, do the councillors know that there's a complaint, and do we have any way of reacting to those complaints, like training or anything like that, or are they just purely for noting?
It's a good question, Councillor. In terms of whether they know, yes, if there has been a breach, they would be advised of that breach and they have the opportunity to respond to the complaint. If no breach has occurred, generally we don't notify them because there's no breach to answer. In terms of training and the sanctions that we can impose at the moment, to be perfectly honest, the Code of Conduct, the Suffolk Local Code of Conduct, doesn't have a great deal of teeth, if I'm brutally honest, but we try to resolve things amicably between the parties, particularly where training is required. So where a breach has occurred through any of the breaches that potentially can take place against that code, we would then make recommendations that they undertake further training so it's not repeated. But coming back to the point in terms of the sanctions, there's not a huge amount that we can impose on councillors generally per se, whether it's a district councillor or parish councillors. But the code is being revised as we speak, and there may be more sanctions that we can apply, but that needs to be ratified first. And again, that will be brought back to this committee.
Councillor McLaren, please.
I just follow up on Councillor Caston's question. In these instances, the ward members are not advised, or are they of trouble with the parish council?
If we feel there's significant issues within their ward, yes, they would be as a matter of courtesy. So what we wouldn't want to do is, for any councillors here, for example, not to be aware of any serious matters that they might get ambushed if they were to attend the parish council meeting. That's not in the interests of us as the monitoring officers or for you as district councillors to get caught up in that if you weren't given sight of what's coming around the corner.
And do SALT get involved with this process?
Yes. Sorry, Councillor. Yes. In particularly with some of the training. So we work closely with SALC. They have a clear role and we have a clear role, and sometimes there's a little bit of a grey area, but we would sometimes take advice from SALC in moving things forward. SALC, for example, would get heavily involved with, say, issues around the parish clerks. We don't have any jurisdictions against them because they're employed by the parish council. So matters of that would be referred to, say, the chair, and also they could seek advice from SALC. But generally, Code of Conduct issues are dealt with by us as the monitoring officers at district council level.
Thank you, John.
Do we have any more questions from members, please? No? In that case, thank you. I will now open the item up for debate. Members, the floor is yours for debate. No? Okay. Thank you very much. Therefore, the recommendation is that the Code of Conduct complaints monitoring information contained in paper JAC 20/16 be noted. And thank you. So we'll now move on to agenda item 11. And this is JSAC 2114, the forward plan. Are there any suggestions, comments or amendments, please, to that plan? Councillor Caston?
I have no amendments or anything. I'm pretty happy with it.
Thank you very much.
I don't know.
Do any other members have any comments or amendments, etc.? No? Okay. Thank you very much indeed. That actually concludes the meeting, and the next meeting is currently scheduled for the 24th of January 22, commencing at 9:30 a.m. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending today and thank the officers for the various papers that they've presented. And obviously, as we're not meeting again until after Christmas, I hope you all have a nice Christmas and a Happy New Year. Probably the first one to say that this year. Bit of